Hello there, I'm Kiosk Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Ezekiel, genetic revelations of the Israelites. Without further ado, let's get into it. This article was updated April 16th, 2024. Written by Dr. Aaron Elhike. Resurrecting Ancestry. Genetic Revelations Beyond Israelites. The prophecy of the Valley of Dry Bones, as envisioned by the prophet Ezekiel, stands as one of the most potent revelations in his repertoire. Within this vision, Ezekiel is transported to a desolate valley strewn with skeletal remains of Israelites, tasked with breathing life into these bones as he also instills them hope and guides them back to the land of Israel. As one who is often tasked with doing the impossible, though not exactly in biblical proportions, I was always moved by this prophecy. The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, and set me in the middle of the valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and the skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. Ezekiel 37. Can we fulfill Ezekiel's vision? It is difficult to answer the question precisely what Ezekiel meant. Ezekiel's prophecies are replete with strange and unique words with parallels such as Hashmal, Harel, and Lol Yichen. The original meaning was lost, but today they denote electricity, angel, and impossible, respectively, in Hebrew. Jewish mysticism is firmly rooted in Ezekiel's visions involving the vision of God's palace and his vehicle, which were later developed by Jewish sages, primarily Enoch. Debates about the meaning of those visions and their impact on Judaism have endured until today. See why Haria's excellent book, Jewish Magic Before the Rise of Kabbalah. Many people who read my articles on ancient origins or my studies take the time to write to me and share their stories and aspirations. I often find myself in awe of the influence of Enochian literature on the public, a collection of books that were deemed too out of the box to be included in the Bible, and nearly went extinct several times. Here we have an illustration, engraving of the Vision of the Valley of Dry Bones by Gustave Doré. If we are to understand Ezekiel's vision in a somewhat literal meaning, i.e., bringing dead things back to life, we can then ask, has his vision been fulfilled? This is where archaeology and paleogenetics come in. In 2005, Israel scientists managed to grow a palm tree that went extinct from a 2,000-year-old palm seed found in Judean desert. By 2023, the fifth tree gave fruit. They tasted good. My. Here we have a picture of the revitalized Judea date palm at Keturah, Israel. On my last visit to Jerusalem, I heard a tour guide speaking enthusiastically about bringing back more extinct plant species. They stopped there, but my imagination kept going. Imagine having lived Judean telling us about the true beliefs before the emergence of the Orthodoxy, the dominant branch of Judaism in Israel. He probably would have killed himself right there, which begs the question of whether it is worth the effort. Of course, resurrecting a plant from a seed which had evolved to go dormant under stress, and resurrecting people, even assuming a 2,000-year-old human ovum and seeds could be found, are entirely different things scientifically, practically, and ethically. Not to mention a bit too far from the original prophecy that spoke to resurrecting the specific people who suffered. In that respect, the field dealing with ancient genomes fulfills the spirit of the prophecy when it brings back the knowledge about these ancient people from their ancient DNA and allows us to share the stories of their lives and how they impact our lives. This is what Ezekiel had in mind. As we said before, it can be a little tricky to know sometimes when considering the book of Ezekiel. Here we have a ADNA laboratory working on trying to find DNA in these skulls of these various animals. You know, we know about the woolly mammoth and aims to try to bring that species back to life. You know, I was kind of joking around with myself a couple of nights ago that I imagine that some of the billionaires have secret, planetariums, or not planetariums, but, secret little private animal sanctuaries with extinct animals. I'm telling you, I'm sure there's a Saudi prince out there with a pet saber tooth. Guarantee it. There is a Saudi prince out there with a pet saber tooth. Right? They got pet bears. I'm sure one or two of them got an extinct pet bear with them. You'd be foolish to not think. I mean, if the ancients had the knowledge of DNA, I mean, what are the possibilities that right now we don't have some of the replicating abilities or technologies of that, ancient times? I mean, the more research I do into ancient civilizations, the more I'm more and more convinced that it may have been an advanced civilization that was of humans, or humanoids, I should say, that was flying the Ramani that we see written in the Hindu texts. I don't know. Lately, the whole idea of aliens has been seeming less and less intriguing to me, and I've been focusing more and more on what's below us rather than what's above us. And I think I'm starting to catch on to their propaganda and grift. Keep us focusing on the sky without focusing on what's really around us. The true hidden history. But let's continue. Resurrecting ancient Israelites, Semites, and more. In 2019, an article published in Ancient Origins, I predicted that we are very close to the day that we can use ancient DNA to learn how related we are to ancient Israelites. Now, 5 years and nearly 200,000 readers later, this is an everyday reality. I developed genetic tests that allow anyone to test how genetically close they are to each of the 13 Israelite tribes. Yes, 13. Joseph had 2 sons. Oh boy. Sounds like someone speaking heresy. Looking back to when we started, the 10 lost tribes of Israel and the kingdom of Judah include all 13 individual tests. which are the most desirable tests. I have recently completed the Ancient Semitic Ancestry test that offers a breakdown of ancestry to the 9 known Semitic language groups. It took me 5 years to develop the test due to the high accuracy required to reach such a fine scale resolution. The massive accumulation of data from the Levant allows the development of even more specific tests about the Canaanites who lived in the region, and this is just the beginning. Sequencing DNA from ancient cultures. The importance of the field was noted when the Nobel Prize in Zoology and Medicine was awarded in 2022 to Sevant Pabo, one of the founders of paleogenetics. Today, ancient DNA databases are growing rapidly, with new samples added every day. Using samples extracted from the ear, hair, skull, or teeth, scientists can sequence the DNA of people who've lived as far back as 100,000 years ago. More than 10,000 ancient DNA sequences or genomes are currently available. Cultures like Vikings, tribes of ancient India, Amerindians, Chumash and Inca, ancient Britons, or Greeks and Romans are among the most popular tests in ancient DNA origins. The bias towards European genomes is slowly shrinking. African genomes, which are particularly close to my heart, are typically underrepresented in every scientific field, but not on our website, where 9 ancient African DNA tests are available, more than any other groups, except the Israelites. These tests include the ancient Egyptians, Zulus, Malawi clans from over 15,000 years ago, the Ethiopian hunters from the Moda cave, where one of the most important ancient humans was found, Tanzanian cave dwellers, and 4 generations of the people from the Christian Mukharian kingdom in Sudan. It is like watching all of the deleted scenes from a movie that has been going on for 200,000 years. In this era, large companies like 23andMe are struggling for survival, partly due to their disregard for users' privacy. Additionally, innovating in genetic genealogy has nearly stalled. Paleogenetics stands as the sole engineer driving the field forward, consistently delivering exciting new results on a weekly basis. Yeah, I recommend you don't use 23andMe and Ancestry or any of those. Quite frankly, I wouldn't even use hers, to be honest. Many of these things, they sell your DNA. What was it, 23andMe or Ancestry? One of them was caught selling the genetic data to China. And when you have genetic data of individual people, you can actually create diseases that target individual people. Look it up yourselves. I'm not going to get off track here, but please go online and do some thorough research on genetic terrorism, or genetic warfare, I should say, really. It's a real thing. The US has been actively working on it. Just do your research on it. I'm not going to get too into the weeds on it. Don't want to get in trouble. But let's continue. Sequencing from ancient people. The recent trend in paleogenetics is to sequence individual genomes of VIPs, excuse me, like Ludwig van Beethoven. Wow, I forgot how to Beethoven. There we go. Good Lord, Ludwig van Beethoven. Sheesh. Who, with some help from AI, we can hear talking. Sitting Bull of the Dakota Sinks, and the Chinese Emperor Wu. Comparing your DNA with theirs is possible if enough genetic material survives, which obviously gets easier for more recent people. 6 more VIPs, including the Otzi the Iceman, Asnik the Ancient One, Cheddar Man, Kenwick Man, and the Canaanite Nobleman, are included in the famous Ancient Men tests. A parallel to this test is woman warriors. This is also a new trend in paleogenetics because the notion of fighting women used to be controversial until DNA tests were able to confirm the gender of some of those skeletons. Today, books like Mayer's The Amazons, Lives and Legends of Warrior Women Across the Ancient World are better received when they include DNA evidence. It's important to emphasize that genetic tests that compare your DNA to those of famous males or females are not gender specific. Women can be closer to famous ancient men, just like men could be descended from women warriors. Wait, what about Genesis 10? This is the most commonly asked question that I get. Have you identified the gene pools of the people mentioned in Genesis 10, Table of Nations? The answer is yes, mostly. It took a very long time, but the accumulation of ancient DNA records, coupled with progress in AI, has finally allowed the identification of most of those ancient gene pools, which are available in a series of tests that span from the Paleolithic to the Copper Age, with the ultimate goal of covering all human errors. The Mesolithic origins test, you will find Canaan, the early Neolithic test, and the late Neolithic test, which share the same gene pools. You will find Cush, Tyrus, Shem, Raphath, and Gog and Magog. The Iron Age, to be released, you will discover Tograma, Ashkenaz, Javan, and Tyrus. Taking these tests will offer you a breakdown of those ancient regional ancestries. Here we have a preview of that test. What does the future of paleogenetics hold? Paleogenetics is the most exciting field in genetics, and we have only scratched the surface. With released 5 new gene pool tests only last month, allowing users to break down their ancient ancestry up to 50 gene pools. The future of the field lies in its integration with other historical data sets. Apologies. Here we have a mythological origin map. Yeah. I don't know. Lately, I've been thinking mythology is more the truth, but that's a whole nother conversation. Let's continue. For example, by contrasting our database of ancient DNA and database of ancient myths, we can tell people which ancient beliefs their ancestors had and quantify them. Users of these new test series, Mythical Origins, receive the breakdown of mythological creatures worshipped or feared by their ancestors, not gene pools like in the gene pool series. Such innovative tests are to where the field should go. Impressive. Now let's continue doing our little dive here on genetics of the Israelites. Oh, well, look at that. Now, this article was updated June 17th, 2019 by Dr. Erin L. Hike, who we just read her previous article that was released in 2024. Resurrecting the Ancient Israelites from the Valley of Dry Bones. Oh, wait. Yep, okay, we're good. We're good. Sorry, just want to make sure. The vision of the Valley of Dry Bones prophecy is one of the most powerful prophecies of the prophet Ezekiel. In this vision, Ezekiel finds himself in a valley full of dry human bones of Israelite origins. He is tasked to revive them, bring them hope, and lead them to the land of Israel. The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out the Spirit of the Lord, and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He had led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound. The bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and the skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. Ezekiel 37. Here we have an image of the engraving of the vision of the Valley of the Dry Bones by Gustave Doré. Ezekiel's vision and Jewish ancestry. For the past decades, paleogenomics and the field dealing with the ancient genomes has been fulfilling Ezekiel's vision by extracting DNA from the dry bones and telling their stories with increasing accuracy. As Ezekiel envisioned, only dry and cold bones can tell stories. So perhaps they were aware of genetic testing at that time? Something to keep in mind, like I said earlier. Humidity and heat accelerate the degradation of DNA beyond repair. Even the samples we can use are of poor quality, leading to the inability to put together all the pieces of the DNA, and thus resulting in incomplete stories from the bones, as if told by stuttering, tongueless skeletons. These are only some of the challenges we face in our efforts to reconstruct the past. Ezekiel's prophecies were written in the 6th century after several exiles of the Judeans to Babylon, 601 to 558 BC. The importance of this vision to debate on the continuity of the Jewish people became apparent very quickly. Already in the Talmud, 2 interpretations were offered. The first considered it completely allegory. The second considered it a reality, where the Babylonian exiles returned to the Israel and continued the Judean bloodline. Zionism, a secular movement that recruited the Bible to serve its needs whenever necessary, considered the state of Israel the ultimate fulfillment of Ezekiel prophecies and called to the ingathering of the exiles. The question of whether Ezekiel's vision has been correctly interpreted is not anachronistic and has offshoots in history, archaeology, linguistics, and genetics, and the lastest battlefield of the primordialists and the constructivists. Did contemporary Jews descend from the ancient Israelites, as the primordialists claim? Or did they descend from people who converted to Judaism and only later on adopted nationalist ideas, as the constructivist camp argues? All right, Doc is getting a little kinky with her rhetoric. Of course, one look at Ethiopian, Yemite, Ashkenazic, and Russian Jews can lead credence to the constructivist view without digging up a single bone. However, the primordialist camp has ready-made answers to that question. It criticized the weak diaspora Jews who succumbed to assimilation and embraced the Jews who remained as authentic Israelites. Strong claims from the doc. Using a Jew type to study Jewish ancestry. It has always been clear to the only way to decide that Jewish communities represent the ancient Israelites most accurately is by going back to the source, Israel. Therefore, in the late 19th century, a search for the... Hold on, I had to take a sip before I give a shot at pronouncing this. The Judische typus, the Jewish type, was launched. Okay, her words, not mine. Just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. Her words do not represent the views of Ronin Art and Music. Even if it's done on a scientific basis. Not me. All right. Here we have photograph images of Jewish types from Popular Science Monthly, 1898. Anthropologists explored Palestine, studied the native inhabitants, and compared their anthropological measures to Jews. Oh boy. The results of these studies were incredibly disappointing, at least to the Ashkenazic Jews who carried out these studies and craved to see the Judish typus reflected in the mirror. As it turned out, Yemenite Jews held the greatest anthropological resemblance to the wandering Bedouins, the poster boys of the patriarchs. Ashkenazi Jews, by contrast, resemble the Caucasian type more than anything else. F on 1994. So that can cause some controversy. But this all kind of plays into the whole propaganda that we're seeing going on currently right now and in the Bible, as we've covered in previous episodes. When we were discussing Jezebel. What you have here is the Ashkenazic Jews who came from Europe. They're Jews from Europe. And doing this genetic test, they were convinced that they originated from Israel, but it turns out that the Palestinian Jews are from that area. Just translating the information presented in the article. But what I'm talking about in terms of propaganda is these are things we have to keep in mind for any of us. That's why I tell people be careful with those DNA tests, because there's propaganda within those tests. You don't necessarily need to do those tests to trace your lineage. Speak to your grandparents. Go through the history of photography of where people came from. Where did your great grandfather originate from? Where did your great great grandmother originate from? I'm blessed and fortunate that a cousin of mine who's a very well renowned photographer in the Caribbean, he was able to trace our lineage. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but I was fortunate enough that he was someone that was able to figure that out. So by looking at our historical documents of our family lineage and tracing it that way, many of us out there, you don't need to take these DNA tests. You can trace your lineage using historical documents. You can go to the state libraries and what have you and trace your lineage that way. The only reason why I'm saying that is because even here for the Ashkenazic Jews, they were so convinced that by using these genetic tests that they would prove that they were originated from Israel and originated from Palestine, that area, that it turns out that's not the case. But they're gonna suppress that information or disregard it, whatever, have tests that maybe point more in their favor. It's all part of the propaganda. And then you're trying to then question, well, why are they erasing and suppressing the true origin of the real Jews? And I'm not saying that in a manner of despairing anyone, but I'm just saying look at the information that's being presented to you, and look at the information we've covered already in regards to Moses and the great Exodus, as we are well aware that Moses was actually an Egyptian. He wasn't an Israelite. So these are things that we all have to take into consideration and really question when it comes to our own historical understanding of our reality. And that's really what I'm trying to eloquently say here. But enough of a Ronin rant. Let us get back into it. This is not what Zionist leaders wanted to hear. And amid the formation of their naturalistic movement that called Jews to return to their homeland, fight, and maybe die for it, the research question had to be rephrased, abandoning any desire to see Judish typus specimen ever again. The new research paradigm focused on studying features common to all contemporary Jews and deriving the characteristics of the Judish typus from them. Anhalt 2016. Unfortunately, no biomarker for Jewishness was ever found in the way that excluded Jews from non-Jews. Yet the question remained, which of all the Jews who have nothing in common except religion best represent the ancient Israelites? The answer among the Ashkenazic Jewish researchers was almost unanimous. Let us mold the Judish typus in our own image. If you scroll a little bit far back in my Lounge Ronin playlist, we cover the ancient city of Shangri-La and the Nazi connection. And there we cover, and then also check out my Aryan race um, presentation. We cover several articles talking about the genetics of the type of Aryan race and how the Nazis got it completely wrong. But this is what I'm trying to say here is that you end up having researchers and you end up having this narrative that's created. So because they couldn't find it in one way, they're now going to create an entire different way of studying that will confirm and reaffirm their beliefs and stance. And this is a very dangerous rhetoric that we see that happens everywhere throughout the world. I'm not just saying this is happening particularly in the Middle East, but this is happening everywhere. Just like we try to pretend as if North Africa is Arab when it really is African, but it was overtaken by Arabs. But that's a whole nother conversation. Let's continue. To support these claims, geneticists began producing a large body of literature aimed to support and prove two things. One, their genetic superiority, and two, their genetic ties to Israel, by showing their resemblance to Levantian populations, Falk 2017, whose own claims to the land were later dismissed on account of being work migrants. Kirsch, 2003, demonstrated how human geneticists and physicians have consistently manipulated their results and emphasized the sociological and historical aspects of their research, using their work as a vehicle for establishing a national identity and confirming the Zionist narrative. These are the words of the doctor, let's make sure we get her name, Dr. Elhike, right? But what she's saying here is something that we saw being done with the Germans, with the Nazis. We saw this being done here in the United States when it came to Africans. We still see it when it comes to blacks. You know, when you go and pull up the Webster Dictionary from like 1812, 1822, around that time, it says that an American is an aborigine of copper skin. And back in the day, they described black people with copper skin. So this is a whole thing that we have to realize. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Jewish person from Brooklyn, or a Jewish person from Palestine, or a Jewish person from Ethiopia. The point is that we all have to realize that a lot of the information that we're being presented to is going to be manipulated. We have to look at both sides. We have to do our own research, even if that means doing our own research into our own lineage. But here you have it, that it was clearly used to establish this Zionist narrative of what is a Israelite. And this starts getting into very complicated and dangerous territory when it starts coming to human rights. And these are things that are currently going on right now that are extremely prevalent and extremely damning. If you listen to my piece where we talked about the Amalek people and this derogatory word, this propagandized word, and where it comes from and what it means, then you start understanding where a lot of this type of rhetoric that we're seeing in terms of Zionist narrative is being populated. It's getting into the weeds, and I'm trying to not get too deep into the weeds here for any of my listeners, especially anyone of Jewish descent. I'm not trying to gaslight you or trigger you or anything like that. Like I keep on saying, do your own research into these things. As myself, I have some of these many books that I have in my wish list and in my own library that I use to do my own studying and references for. And like I said, this is just a light introduction for all of us, including myself. So don't take anything that I'm saying as something to take offense to, because I'm learning as well. But we have to be self-aware of the reality that we're currently living in and what is currently going on in the Middle East. And I'm just saying we just need to be self-aware about that. But let's continue. Let me get a sip. The mammoth in the room was the lack of any genetic evidence from the ancient Israelites that would allow testing the similarity of the DNA to that of modern day Jews. Since no one imagined that mammoths would ever come to life, they avoided the problem completely. It is much easier to pretend that modern day Jews and Ashkenazic Jews in particular are living replicas of the ancient Israelites who not only are related to one another, but also resisted the gene flow from non-Jews all this time, despite the imagined link between modern day Jews and ancient Israelites. The claims of the primordialist camp become well accepted and in the direct to consumer industry. The myth of the Cohen gene, Skorecki et al., 1997, or four miltochlorian, four miltotrodial mothers, Behar et al., 2004, produced by the members of the camp, became the bedrock of the genetic Judaism era, where only needs of the order a genetic test from right company to receive a Jewish certificate. So think about that. Here it says, produced by the members of this camp became the bedrock of the genetic Judaism era, where one needs only to order a genetic test from the right company to receive a Jewishness certificate. So there you have it in yourself. Now I'm not going to get into the conspiracy of any of that. I will allow my listeners to do their own little dive into that. But like I said, things start getting really fishy when you start manipulating genetics. But let's continue. Using DNA to study Jewish ancestry. Paleogenomics changed all that. Thanks to advances in the field, it became possible to extract DNA from ancient people and identify their mitochondrial haplogroups and even autosomal DNA. This remarkable progress allowed the unthinkable, a semi-revival of the ancient Israelites from the dry bones and the recovery of their stories. The DNA extracted from those bones can tell us who these people were, what they looked like, what they ate, and what diseases they carried. Nelson et al. 2017, Prohaska et al. 2019. We can trace their migration routes to gain a deeper understanding of where we all come from. Yes, they can also tell us how similar those ancient Israelites were to modern day people, and if modern day Jews are not the lineal descendants of ancient Israelites. We can find out who is. Oh boy. Let's read that again. Yes, they can also tell us how similar those ancient Israelites were to modern day people. And if modern day Jews are not the lineal descendants of the ancient Israelites, we can find out who is. Oh boy. This dog, she is a wild one. To answer some of these questions, Ancient DNA Origins developed a series of genetic tests disclosed I contributed to the development, which allow comparing the DNA of modern day people to the ancient DNA extracted from skeletons of various people, including ancient Israelites. And we covered that in the first article. Here we have the dry bones from a Raqefet cave. So, we covered in the first half of this that her DNA sequencing that she came up with for people of that region to find out their lineage. And this older article, what I like about it is that, following up with this, is that it's kind of presenting the conflicting reasoning behind why she created her genetic tests. And this is just something I think for many people out there to just keep into mind and to be very, suspicious of those genetic tests. And like I said earlier, there are other ways to find your genetic lineage. There are other ways, safer ways that you don't give away your genetic data. The bones still cannot speak, but in their own way, they have a lot to teach us and allow us to reevaluate our core beliefs. The answer to the question is who is closer to the ancient Israelites rests in the DNA extracted from some 50 bones of ancient Israelites and Judeans with many more to come. Are modern day Jews mostly Middle Easterners or ancient Israelites like Oyster claims? Hardly. Upon examining the results of 80 Jews from various communities, I cannot help noticing the irony considering how the progress in population genetics validated the findings of the 19th century anthropologists who combed the Levant in the honest search for the Jewish typus. Before the repercussions of their findings became clear and the results were deplored on every stage, the most similar Jews to the ancient Israelites who left their dry bones in the Rafaqet Valley in Israel were Yemite and Mesopotamian Jews. But that genetic similarity was less than 15% on average. In agreement with our previous analysis ascribing less than 5% ancient Levite ancestry to Ashkenazic Jews. Das et al. 2017. Yet, these averages mask the high heterogeneity among all Jewish communities. Some people may share the highest similarity with Gal, named after Wonder Woman actress Gal Gadot, a young Neolithic woman, only 6,200 years old, and other people may find that they are closer to the Abraham, a Turkish man who led a group of Anatolians to what must have felt was the Promised Land. Due to the many population replacements that the area experienced, we can see a diverse range of mitochondrial haplogroups that vary over time. Among the common lineages are JK, K1A, and T. An analysis of Judeans from 1st century AD confirmed the prevalence of the T haplogroup Mathians et al. 2009, found today in less than 10% of the Ashkenazic Jews. Unsurprisingly, not a single skeleton matches the alleged four Ashkenazic Jewish mothers whose origins is in prehistoric Europe. As expected, an exact match with one of those mothers was found in Neolithic Spain. Oh boy. This is the only match from prehistoric times to date, but it is reasonable to expect many more to come as ancient DNA from Eastern Europe and the Caucasus will be sequenced. Interestingly, the Y chromosome haplotypes of the ancient Israelites are typically E1b1 and T1 haplotypes, commonly found today in Africa, with lower frequencies in the Middle East and Europe. Let's repeat that paragraph. This is the only match from Paleolithic times, but it's reasonable to expect many more to come as ancient DNA from Eastern Europe and the Caucasus will be sequenced. Interestingly, the Y chromosomal haplotypes of ancient Israelites are typically E1b1 and T1 haplotypes, commonly found today in Africa, with lower frequencies in the Middle East and Europe. Read that one more time. Interestingly, the Y chromosomal haplotypes of the ancient Israelites are typically E1b1 and T1 haplotypes, commonly found today in Africa, with lower frequencies in the Middle East and Europe. Shout out to my Ethiopian Jews. We can expect that future tests cover other regions of the world would be able to explain the remaining portion of the elusive Jewish ancestry. Only time will say if genetic Jewishness will evolve into primeval into primeval Jewishness, where people define their Jewishness based on their similarity to ancient Israelites and Jews rather than modern ones. Think about it the next time that your favorite genetic testing company tells you that you have some Ashkenazic Jewish ancestry. Mic drop from the doc. Oh, my Lord. Oh, this one's going to be controversial. That's for sure. And like I said earlier, do your own research onto this stuff. But, there's a reason why Israel is not the biggest fan of Ethiopian Jews. Look into the when they were what were they? They were sterilizing Ethiopian Jews that came to Israel. All I know is that this can definitely cause some conflicts, and I don't even want to get into it. I'm not even gonna get into it. Oh Lord, that might have to be a Rumble exclusive. But if that's something y'all want me to get into, let me know down in the comments if you want a Rumble exclusive on that. But all I'm saying for everyone, Ezekiel, genetic revelations of the Israelites, do your own research. Look to the historical texts. Yeah, just do your own research. Really keep an open mind, especially anyone out there if you're of Jewish heritage. I know a lot of the information you just heard might be triggering, might be upsetting for some of you, but please, I implore you, just take a second and just do a little bit of a light dive into this information and see what you find. And then take some time and reflect on it. That's all I'm saying. For anyone out there, really, just take some time and reflect on everything that we've read in the articles and my thoughts and perspectives. I'm not here to try to change anyone's perspective. I'm just here to challenge your foundational belief system and allow you to rebuild anew. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And please make sure to leave a comment with your thoughts below. And make sure to dash in a little bit of that constructive criticism, as that helps me and the channel grow. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.